This is Polyamory Weekly, tales from the front of responsible non-monogamy from a pansexual, kink-friendly point of view. A warning for our under-18 listeners. This is an adult-oriented podcast about really lascivious things, like communication and honesty in relationships. If you're under 18 and looking for upfront advice and answers to questions about sex, please visit scarletteen.com.
This is Polyamory Weekly, episode 485 for September 1st, 2016. Do I end my marriage to try polyamory? That's coming up on today's show. Hey folks, I am your host Minx, and back in the co-host chair is Lusty Guy. How you doing?
Indeed, happy to be here, co-hosting and also failing audio engineer.
I was going to say, our new sound engineer.
Woo, well, yeah, we'll see how it turns out.
We've been having some difficulties with the mixer and Audacity, and also when we failed at Audacity, went back to GarageBand. We've had some challenges. This is our fourth time recording this show. We did it 3 times last week before we got a take we liked, and I listened to the take, and it was so awful in terms of audio I couldn't fix it.
Yeah, back again.
Which is why, so this show was supposed to go out September 1st. It is Monday, Labor Day. I am hoping that we actually get a good take and that I can actually have it for you by end of day today and then get back on the regular posting shows on Thursday schedule. So, sorry it's a little late this week. I'm hoping that the quality of the audio is better and will be moving forward so that you won't have to deal with late shows and you won't have to deal with bad audio.
Or you might.
Hopefully not. Onward to things more related to polyamory than my audio woes are...
There's gotta be some way to relate that to polyamory.
You guys have been asking for more in terms of asexuality, and I'm happy to announce that Asexuality Awareness Week is coming up October 23rd through 29th. So this is an international campaign. It's looking to educate people about not just asexuality, but also things like aromantics, demisexuals, gray asexuals, and also to create some materials that are accessible for the community and to allies like Poly Weekly around the world. And this is an international event, so it's not just in the States. Huzzah! It's October 23rd through 29th, 2016, and you can find more information about that in the show notes at polyweekly.com, or if you have the app, you can always click on the show notes in the app, and then you can click straight through to the link.
This is Dan,
Dawn,
and Karen,
and we are the co-producers of the annual polyamory event, Beyond the Love.
Beyond the Love is a low-cost 3-day event held on November 11th, 12th, and 13th, 2016, in a private space in a beautiful hotel in Columbus, Ohio.
You will find a variety of classes and workshops led by people living in polyamorous relationships from around the country.
As well as fun and interactive extras like poly mixers, game night, and an 80s dance and more.
There will be a wealth of opportunity to learn tools, techniques, and communication skills to enhance our poly relationships.
We will provide a safe environment for meeting with other like-minded people in a supportive and inclusive community.
We welcome anyone living a poly lifestyle or considering doing so.
We're passionate about recognizing poly as a relationship choice and sharing common experiences on our many different paths.
Find out more at beyondthelove.org.
We hope to see you there.
And that's a fun conference. That's a good conference, the Beyond the Love conference. If you guys have a chance to go, you should definitely go. And in Poly in the News, a very fun study came out this week. Actually, it was last week due to the show delay.
Yeah, close enough.
And I love the headline for this. The headline says, 1 in 5 people date non-monogamously, says wide-ranging survey, finally.
Here it is, what you've all been waiting for.
Yeah, and I feel like this is something that we all already knew. And this is specifying dating non-monogamously, not necessarily engaged in long-term non-monogamous relationships. But I'm actually surprised the number is only 20% of the people say that they date non-monogamously because, I don't know, it seems like all these kids today All the millennials and whatever generation comes after the millennials, is that Gen Z? I don't know.
I don't know.
But it seems like there's a lot more openness to this idea of non-monogamy. I'm frankly surprised that the numbers are as low as only 1 in 5. But this is what the study said. It was published in April, and it said 21% of people in the study, which is, by the way, over 8,000 people, have experienced dating non-monogamously.
All of this from a survey from Match.com's, actually from a collection of surveys done by Match.com.
Right. We don't have the specifics of the demographic information, but they did say that that proportion was consistent across age, education level, income, religion, region, political affiliation, and race, but varied with gender and sexual orientation. Men and LGBT identified folks practice non-monogamy at higher rates than women and the straight population.
Surprise, surprise.
Which would make sense. So, nice little bit of information there in the study.
Absolutely. It's always good to have a little bit of numbers to back your opinions, and these numbers comport with my opinions, so I'm willing to agree with them.
And I also do like that in the article, the visual they chose to go with it, it actually appears to be an interracial female couple with average as opposed to idealized bodies, which I thought was kind of nice. I spend a lot of my time searching for stock photos that are not simply white, blonde, middle-class families, and it's very, very difficult to find any type of diversity in stock photos, so that was very nice to find.
Yay!
Our topic this week was a question from a listener. This is one of the products of my dogged work to get through my Cunning Minx email inbox.
Shoveling.
And by the way, if you have sent polyweekly at Gmail an email lately and have not received a response, I should say that I did make it through the Cunning Minx email inbox, but the polyweekly Gmail inbox is not quite done yet. So do not think that you are forgotten. I'm simply working through them one at a time. But this was from a listener who wrote in, and she's in her 20s. She's married, and she has recently discovered polyamory and self-identifies now as poly, but her husband decidedly does not self-identify as poly. This situation has caused both of us a lot of distress. The more I want to experience, or at least have the freedom to explore poly, the more he pushes back. I just want to be able to connect emotionally and physically with people as I see fit, and this is incompatible with the relationship. So she's experiencing a lot of angst over this and says, how can I decide if poly is important enough to leave my marriage over?
Not, a little thing.
Yeah. Just a minor little life question.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
At heart, we're going to go back to something that I say all the time, which is that a relationship exists to help make all of the participants in it better versions of themselves. So the question is, do you feel like this relationship, even with these conflicts, is contributing to making you a better version of yourself? Are you happier and healthier with this situation and this conflict than you would be without it? And, this is a question that is not just theoretical for me. For years, Elle and I conflicted about whether or not we would ever become parents. She wanted to have kids, and I firmly didn't. And we would come back to the topic, and I'm not exaggerating when I say for, about 12 years. And so for about 12 or 14 years, every 3 to 6 months, we would talk about whether or not we were going to have kids. And at the end of each of those conversations, we would come up with, well, I still didn't want to have kids. She still did want to have kids. But both of us were happier and healthier coming back to this difference and trying to work through it and seeing how things had changed, if they had changed, than we would be without each other. And so we stayed. So at the top level, the question for you is this relationship contributing to making you a happier, healthier, better version of yourself? If yes, even with the conflict, soldier on. If no, make a change. Now, that change may not be ending the relationship. There are all kinds of changes. But if it's not, a change is required.
Yeah, this is a very difficult question, especially because we do have a lot, because of the awareness of polyamory is just now starting to become a bit more mainstream. There are many people who have entered into monogamous relationships because they love the person and didn't know that poly was a choice and didn't know that you could self-identify as poly, or simply didn't know that this was a legitimate way to pursue relationships and didn't have any role models, just there was a complete lack of awareness. And so now we have this. We have lots of people who have entered into long-term, loving, committed relationships and that are perhaps just now discovering poly. And it's always tough because it is very often the woman who brings up poly. People think it's the man, but it's very often the woman, at least from the people who write me. Maybe it's just that the men don't write me as much. But...
You know, in the swinging community, they say all the time that it's the men who come up with the idea and it's the women who never want to give it up.
Yeah. But either way, so now we have this situation, right, where we have these monogamous couples where one person is like, hey, let's try poly, and the other person's like, what the fuck? What are you kidding me? You know, I love listening to guys' answer because it really is about, you know, look at what you have. Are you willing to talk about this? For a long time, this is not something that should be decided in a week or a month, right? This is, I mean, if you can spend 12 years discussing whether or not you're going to have a child and still have a happy, loving, committed, fulfilling relationship, and just have that one issue be something that just needs to be discussed for a long time, I'm not sure I'm going to tell you something that you want to hear, because it is not unusual for people to spend not just weeks, but months or years discussing the concept of opening their marriage and revisiting it, as you say, every 3 to 6 months, saying, how would you feel about it now? Oh, no, it still makes my brain tingle. It's still just not in the good way.
Any other thoughts or any? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's like I still hate it. I saw a story on the news the other week about a cheating partner, and it drove me crazy, and I feel like it's the same, whatever your reaction could be. There's going to be a lot of emotional reactions, and they may or may not change over time.
Absolutely. Now, I would encourage you to try to approach this problem not from your perception of your husband's needs and wants. Let him look out for those. You say, for example, I also feel he gets a lot of his self-worth from the fact that he's the only one that I am intimate with. That's not really relevant. That's up to him to figure out. Inasmuch as you're wasting time trying to understand his inner psyche, and this is where he gets his self-worth, or this not, or this is what's really motivating him, or it's really this, or that's really just a distraction. Focus on what you need, communicate your needs to your husband, listen and believe him when he communicates his needs back at you, and accept those. Really, the notion that you're trying to say, well, you know, I think that he gets so much of the self-worth from the fact that I'm the only one he's intimate with, that doesn't mean anything. What means something is this relationship helping you out? Let him look out for whether or not the sources of his self-worth are appropriate. You look out for whether or not he's meeting your needs, and whether or not this relationship is.
Well, and I would argue that if he's telling her what his needs are, if he's saying, I get my sense of self-worth from the fact that you're the only one I'm intimate with, well, you know what? That's okay. I agree that her job is to listen, and if he says what I need is XYZ, then you have to be okay with hearing that, even if you don't like it. If what he's saying is what I need is for you to need me and only me, you have to be okay with that and sit with it. It may be that in 6 months or a year, when you dissect that, maybe that's a little different.
Yeah,
right?
That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
But yeah. I guess I was hearing something a little different. I was worried that our listeners might hear something different too. But it is perfectly okay for him to say that, and it may take a while to drill down and figure out that, you know, when he says, what I need is for you to be with me and only me, that, you know, that may go down to some childhood thing of, I don't know.
Who knows?
It's
impossible to know.
It could be anything. But I would say just keep listening and don't take his needs personally. His needs are about him. They're not about you. Your needs are about you, and they're both okay. And it can be upsetting to hear from your partner, I need to be able to sleep with other people, or I need to be able to sleep with just you. Both of those can be very upsetting to hear, but own that it is only what you need, and just try to be as tolerant and as patient as you can in understanding that your partner's needs are not about you.
Absolutely. Now, I would also like to add, I'm trying to do this more after talking with Elle, a serious layer of compassion. You're in a hard spot. That is a very difficult position to be in when partners have such fundamental differences about how this particular relationship game should be played. It can make for a really challenging game. So, hearts out to you for being in that position. And for all that we're saying, you may want to take time, make sure and understand, accept what your partner's saying. If the bottom line is, I'm not happy, I'm not healthy, this relationship is promoting behavior in me that is not my best me. It's not promoting me to behave in ways that I feel represent me well. It's contributing to me behaving in ways that I'm ashamed of. You have every right to pull the plug and make that change too.
As does he.
That's right. In the final analysis, only you can make the decision on whether or not, where it falls on that scale of I'm better, I'm not a better version of myself. But wherever it falls on that scale, you have every right to act on it.
I agree. And I do love that you said this is a hard conversation. And the fact that you keep having to have it every 3 to 6 months, it is terrifying. It's terrifying for both of you for different reasons. So be kind and compassionate. Understand the other person is probably just as terrified as you are of this extremely uncomfortable conversation.
Exactly. So best of luck and keep us informed.
Oh, and I should mention too, though, that I did write a post on FAQ of how to introduce poly to an existing monogamous relationship, and I'll provide a link to that in the show notes. And we had some feedback this week, a couple of bits of feedback. The first is from Leanne, who wrote something that was kind of long, so we don't have time to read the whole thing, but Leanne did ask for more relationship anarchy content on the podcast. So there is a relationship anarchy group here in Seattle that meets, and we'll work on getting that to you. Now, Leanne also asked for some poly vocabulary for something that was a challenge for us. We weren't quite sure. So Leanne wrote, "What is it called if the crush of my lover on my metamor feels contagious? I don't think I'm having a crush on them myself, but I feel very attracted to getting to know them better, enjoy meeting them, and spending time with them, building closer connection. It's not just compersion, but it's also not yet a crush. I came up with co-crush, but maybe there's something better."
If co-crush works for you, what I usually use in this and related situation is induced. When my partner's feelings induce similar feelings in me, when I'm happy because my partner's happy, when I'm sexually aroused because my partner's sexually aroused, when I'm angry because my partner's angry, I usually say that those emotions, those are induced emotions in me. But, whatever works for you.
You know what it sounds like to me is kind of like the concept of bromance, like when two guys just really like each other. It's not sexual, it's not romantic, but they really like each other. So would this be like I can't think of any good words. Metamance? A paramance.
A paramance? Paramance?
Like paramour means lover on the side. So this would be like a paramance?
I don't know. Whenever I hear the term bromance, by the way, I always think somebody who's afraid to admit that they actually do just have a crush on each other. I always think bromance is, oh my God, we're too homophobic to admit that we think we're cute.
Well, yeah, but it just makes it all the more adorable. I don't know. So we're not helping you at all. If anybody else has a better idea of what to call that when you are just really interested in spending more time with your metamor and you don't have a romantic crush on them, but you're just like...
Or you might.
Dually excited. So this next audio comment, as you will very soon hear, was very, very old, and I pulled it out of my Gmail archives. Yes, it is over a year old. And you'll know that because it's about the marriage equality decision the Supreme Court made last July.
I'm calling in reference to the podcast for July 10th or 11 regarding the Supreme Court decision. And the speakers were referring to John Roberts as being a dissenter. And I believe that is incorrect information. He was not one of the dissenters. So if you could check that out and maybe correct that. My name is Linda.
First of all, thank you, Linda, for calling in. And my apologies that it took a year to dig your audio out of the archives. We always appreciate it when you guys take the time to call in. So I actually looked up to see who did in fact write the dissent. So what happened was all of the 4 dissenting justices each wrote their own dissent. However, Justice Roberts was the only one to read his dissent from the bench, which is why all the papers picked that up, because he actually read it from the bench. But Scalia, Thomas, and Alito also wrote their own dissent. They just weren't read publicly. So that's why we said Roberts wrote the dissent, because that was the most obvious one.
So there you go.
Now we got another piece of audio that was requested not to be played. So this was feedback from the monogamous partner in a mono-poly relationship, who pointed out that sometimes in the poly community, the feedback towards monogamy can be negative to the point of being off-putting, that the person feels like he's being judged for not being poly, and then hears poly folks judge each other. He did say that we did a good job on the podcast of not doing that so much.
I think he said even though occasionally on the podcast he did get that impression. I'm not sure. But let me just say,
I count that as a pretty good job.
I'll take that as pretty good. For the record, whenever you hear me saying that I think that polyamory is superior to monogamy, that means that I have spoken incorrectly.
That is sarcasm.
Yeah, I don't believe that to be the case in the slightest. I don't think there's any ethical superiority to monogamy or non-monogamy. And in fact, that holier than thou, I'm a special snowflake attitude that I agree is rampant in the poly community annoys the cold piss water out of me.
Yeah.
So I'm with you, man. If you hear me saying that, I'm screwing up somehow.
And we just did a podcast recently where there was a person recently found poly, was all excited about the loving, warm embrace of the community, and then found out that people in the community are just as insecure, shallow, judgmental dickwads as everybody else. Which isn't to say that that's, I shouldn't say not everybody in the community, but there is certainly a high level of judgmentalism, judgmentality. People in the poly community can be very judgmental.
There you go. Tendency towards judgmentalism.
And I think that's true for people of any sort of alternative community. It's because we spend so much time defining we spend a lot of time and energy defining who we are and what we aren't. And so therefore, when we see or hear someone that we don't think falls into the, who we are and what we are and aren't, that we can be a tad snobby about it. In fact, I found that especially, I was definitely that way my first few years into poly. I alienated a lot of friends that way, which is why I've taken to embracing tolerance for all relationship and styles and all gender and orientations. Because really, who are we to say what works for anybody else? But I still fail at that sometimes too. I'm not as tolerant as I should be all the time.
Yeah, I say all the time that there is no demographic that has either a monopoly on or immunity to asshole-ish behavior, even when that demographic is of one, me.
It's time for your Happy Poly Moment of the Week, brought to you by Fubbly Polyamorists everywhere.
Lately I noticed that I was feeling a tiny thing of jealousy from the way one of my lovers talks about her crush. I was irritated at myself a bit, so I sat down with my thought notebook to figure out what it was that was bothering me. I noticed my irritation was slightly slipping out before in front of my lover, which is really not cool. So I tried to step back and own my emotions before I would go and talk to them about it. I figured out I was jealous because of her crush on my Metamor, which is just too cute. Like, the crush is cute, probably also the Metamor, but watching the crush is really cute. And I think I was kind of jealous about the way their NRE is really shiny and new, while ours kind of wears off a bit, even though our dynamics are really pretty cool. I guess I'm just such a sucker for NRE that I get jealous if other people have more of it than me. So next I wrote down how much, besides that one little jealous thing, I felt valued and seen and cared about by my lover. And I found a lot of things to back up that this was really the case. At that point, she also was in the room, just occupied with something else. And she looked up, "Hey, are you okay?" Yeah, kinda, I'm writing. What about? Oh, my headphone space for drama. And we both know we use this term lightly when it's not that bad anyway. And then she asked, oh, is it about... And then she named the exact thing that brought up my jealousy that day. We said we'd talk later when I was finished writing and reflecting. And I just sat there smiling to myself and just checking off in my notebook what I'd just written about feeling seen and cared about, because there was more evidence coming in. And then the talk we had about it later also brought up other aspects from her point of view that showed she was seeing me all along. Like a few weeks ago, I sent you another happy Polly moment about smelling people's scents and clothes. And one of the points when I was jealous was when she happily sniffed my Metamorph hoodie. And then later in the talk, she told me that when she was doing this, she was thinking also about me, because that was one of my favorite things to do. So, yeah, I'm seen all around, and I know that my feelings are sometimes just not... There's not really a reason for the jealousy to stay. There doesn't have to anything to be changed. It's just cool.
I love this particular Happy Polly moment because it's about working on your own shit and working through jealousy, which, you know, is difficult. It's a very uncomfortable feeling to have. And I love that you wrote it down and how you felt cared for by your lover. I mean, that's just a fantastic way to deal with jealousy. What a great Happy Polly moment.
And what a great way to lean into and talk about that negative feeling.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Lean in.
Happy Mardi Gras, cunning minx. My Happy Polly moment happened this past Sunday during Mardi Gras season. We were waiting for the parade to start on a Sunday, my paramour and myself. We were walking up and down waiting for the parade to begin, and we decided we would take our spot where we told our sweetie we would be once we saw that the parade had started to roll. So we decided that we would stand together so he could see how happy we were. And we were standing there and waving and shouting, hey, throw us something, because that's what you do in Louisiana during Mardi Gras. And sure enough, he came by and tossed us his special throws that he had made, and we were all happy. And then after the parade, he texted me and said, where are you? And I said, we're back at the house where we were. And he made his way, and I was able to watch them cuddle together and be happy. And then she went home, and he came to my place, and we had a happy Mardi Gras. So that's our Happy Polly moment.
That sounds so lovely and sweet. And I think in Lusty Guy's imagination, there were like nakedness and beads and all kinds of Mardi Gras debauchery.
It's Mardi Gras. I think that, and for that matter, going home and celebrating Mardi Gras, that's the euphemism for sex. I'm telling you right now.
Sex with beads?
Sex with beads.
Okay.
Sex for beads?
I think in exchange for beads. Those are cheap plastic beads.
Well, you know.
Anyway. Well, I think that about wraps it up for today's show. Take 1 million.
With luck, anyway. We'll find out when we get to the editing
When I get,
room.
I hope this is something I can edit. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Thank you for your patience with the show this week. And by the way, thank you for your donations, which did let us get this fantabulous mixer that seems to be very complicated to hook up to our recording software. But we do appreciate that. And if you do have questions, comments, or feedback, hey, email box is empty. polyweekly@gmail.com, or you can call 802-505-POLY, or you can find us on facebook.com/polyweekly. I do post Polly in the News articles there as they come up throughout the week. And remember, it's not all about the sex.